Hello and welcome back to Mississippi Family Homestead.
I'm Tina and this is Scott. And tonight we're going to be talking about the hidden cost of rural living or country living, or if you're just trying to buy a homestead out in the country. So, a lot of things, you think about, you've got to, buy a property or acquire property, and you're going to have costs for that. But there are other costs that, a lot of people really don't think about when you're acquiring your property, and some things that you need to do to that you have to spend money to do certain things on your property. So there are some things that you need to talk about, and one of those is your water system on your property. I know a lot of states, especially if it's a mountainous state, they have a lot of wells. So you'll have to have a well dug if you're in, say North Carolina. I know a lot of people, if they live out in the country, they have to have a well dug, and that does run into some costs to have that done.
Right. We're talking about kind of the cost that we came into that we weren't expecting.
Mm-hmm.
We did expect it, but even hook it up to your county water system does take a little money because we did have to provide the pipe to come back
Yeah,
here to the property and to
that
hook it
was
up.
that was a lot of pipe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we buried it ourselves with a tractor, so you can bury it, if you rent something, you could probably bury it that way. Renting something, that's the little bit of cost, and all these little costs add up. So,
Yeah,
y-
and if you're in a state where you do have to dig a well, my sister, they where they live, they have wells. They don't
and the
have.
wells get very
Yeah,
expensive.
yeah, and according to how deep they have to dig the wells, it's anywhere from $30 to $80 per foot. So
I know
that's.
people around here that I've heard that, $12,000 for a well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think, you can get it, they'll dig the well and they don't even know that they're going to hit water.
Right,
So
right. So that's something that you need to think about when you're buying your property, is where you're going to get your water from.
imagine paying $12,000 and not knowing for
I
sure,
know,
you
that's
know,
crazy.
but
I
that's,
mean, and one thing that you might want to think about, is there county water, close to where your property that you're buying, or are you going to have to dig a well? So that's one thing that you need to think
you can
about.
also, there's some, if you could get a spring, there's spring water. If you
Yeah.
can cleanse it and filter it, make it safe to drink, that's available in some areas.
And I know some people, some homesteaders, they incorporate a rainwater system. You have to incorporate that. You have to have barrels to hold the rainwater in. That costs money. And then you have to have some kind of filter system for that rainwater. So, either way, you've got to probably upfront some kind of money for your water on your property.
Right.
And speaking of water, you have to have, a septic system. You know, Back in the day, in the
Yeah.
old days, they didn't even have septic systems, but
They just
now,
dug a hole and made an outhouse.
yeah, they did. And you can do that, or you can, look into some composting ways of, for the sewage. But, that's still going to cost some money because you'll have to invest in something like that. Some people still, on homesteads, they'll still have an outhouse or something, but just know that you need some composted material there, or some way to compost that material.
Yeah,
Uh,
outhouses, especially if you're living off grid, they're popular with, the off grid. And there's
mm-hmm.
different kinds of toilets that you can have, compost toilets and
Mm-hmm.
things like that. So,
Yeah.
there are options, but if you want kind of a normal modern thing, it's going to be more of a septic system. And
Mm-hmm.
depending on where you are, the septic system could run up, some money. Uh,
Yeah, and I know in our state you have to own so much land, or they have some rules about how
yeah.
you should do your septic system in our county.
Yeah,
Um,
it's depends on different counties and different areas
mhm.
on what you're going to have to do. So that's
Yeah.
something you do need to check with the laws that governing your area.
I know for us, we had to pay, they actually wouldn't let us build a house or put a house. They had to come like drill and check, check the land for the septic system for what we would do for
Yeah,
that.
you pay. It's one of those aggravating government charges that you have to pay for them to come, and I mean, it was several $100s for them to come drill a hole
Yeah.
and give you a suggestion. It's just,
on where to put what to do
it's one
with
of
your
those
septic.
ridiculous
Yeah.
charges that they,
So that's some hidden cost. And then, then of course you have to think about your electricity and power, whether or not
Right.
you want to be completely off grid and, not have electricity, to your homestead. So, you'll have to have those power lines run. You'll have to have that done. If you're way off, of the road or wherever, that's a long way to run that power.
Yeah.
That's something to think about. And even if you're not wanting power ran to your homestead, this day and time, you really need some kind of power. So you'd have to invest in some solar, power for that. And that costs money too. You have to have solar panels, you have to have the batteries for that solar to go to so they're charged. So, and then the maintenance of that, for the future, the maintenance of that cost.
Right. So, that stuff adds up. So, you also, in a lot of electrical companies, you put down the deposit and they'll run it within a certain amount. And then you have to pay from the pole to your house. So,
Right.
and if you don't know how to do it, you got to pay an electrician, but that wire gets expensive. Also, the wiring and, the burying, and sometimes you don't see that cost. So when you think about it, if you're putting a house somewhere, you got to bury the electrical and bury the water, and that stuff adds up. And that's some expenses that we kind of knew were coming, but it's always going to be more expensive than you think.
Yeah, we had no idea that they were going to charge us to come drill a place on the land to suggest to you where to put your sewage.
Right.
So we didn't know they was going to do that. That was a hidden cost for us.
Yeah.
And then, we got like county water. Well, not only did we had to put a deposit down for that county water, and then we had to run those lines, and it was a pretty good bit of money because we're pretty far back from the actual, road where that water runs from.
Right. So,
and if you're not a do-it-yourselfer, as we are a lot of times, you have to pay somebody to.
And
do
I
that
think
kind of
what we've been able to do so much out here is because we did so much ourselves.
Yeah,
I don't think we could have afford to pay. We do both have full-time jobs and pretty good jobs, but I don't think we could have if we didn't. If we didn't have the tractors and didn't do everything ourselves, I think it would have been a lot different, and we couldn't have really afforded to do as much as we did because we did clear off some land. We did that ourselves, with a chainsaw, and at first just with a chainsaw, and then in a little bitty tractor, and then later on now we have the tractors to clear it off, and it makes it a lot easier. But you also need to consider, we use electric heat, and we also use propane heat for backup. We've got a propane heater for backup that we can take in, and it's safe for us to bring indoors. But
a lot of homesteaders like to get a wood heater, but that is an investment too. You have to buy that wood heater, and been able.
I think that's our old shop had a wood heater in it, and it was
wonderful.
It was wonderful, but just putting it in was more than just a heater.
Yeah, you have to run a pipe.
The pipe
and all of
cost
that.
several $100s, and it was pretty expensive. So, all that stuff really does add up, and that's another reason you probably should try to wait or space it out some instead of, unless you've got a lot of money stored up, which a lot of people do. But if, doing it a little bit at a time, always helps.
That's right. So I think we've watched several shows. There's a homesteader that, built his cabin or whatever, and he took a while to do that, to
Well,
do
I
that
had a
process.
friend that he's not a homesteader, but he's got a garden and
Yeah.
stuff. But his wife and him bought a used mobile home. They lived in it on the property, and for 2 years they spent building their own house. He had a sawmill, and he built his own a very nice house, and he built it totally debt free.
Yeah.
And they just took their time on it and
Did it themselves.
yeah, did it themselves. So, that, that's something to say. If you've got the patience to wait, then, you could do a little at a time. And I think that's one of the biggest regrets I've got is I wish we would have waited a little longer for getting this house.
Yeah.
And
another thing that you want to think about, those hidden costs is your maintenance on your property.
yeah,
There's going to be maintenance. If you have a private road going a long ways, you have to maintain that road, and that's going to be eventual.
and you got to
cost
build
on
that road. We built our driveway with the tractor, and it took a little while. It would have probably cost thousands of dollars if we paid somebody to do it.
So that's a cost that most people don't think about. And we did buy rocks,
Yeah.
to go on our driveway, and those have kind of deteriorated over the years, and we really
It's
need
really
to,
tough, but they
they
have gone up.
yeah.
And the further you live out, the more it's going to cost to have things brought in like that.
Right.
So remember that.
And then your fencing cost, if you're going to get, any kind of, even around your garden, if you want a kind of fence, or even if it's for you're thinking about getting cows or whatever, you need to think about the fencing cost, because fencing is really, really expensive.
And we still have not put a full fence around our garden.
No, we hadn't.
Luckily, there's dogs out there. The dogs usually stay away out of the garden, but they also have helped keep the deer out too. So, we'll probably put an electric fence up at some point. But
But that costs money too,
yeah,
whether it's
it
electric
is.
or not electric.
Right. It does get expensive. So, that's one of the things that you need to know about if you're getting into homesteading or buying you some land is look at what kind of animals you're going to want. And, the cost is more than just feeding them, but you got to think about the land of the,
Where they're going to go.
yeah, where they're going to go.
And if you need a fence.
Yeah. And if you need to clear off some land, level it out or something like that. So keep that in mind. And of course, the larger the property, the bigger the cost. And many times, our property is not huge. I mean, in the scheme of things, but it's big for us, about almost 50 acres. And I don't think
we don't live on, we live on what, maybe 5?
Yeah, I think it's not real expensive. If, we maintain the 5 acres, but if we maintained all of it, if you had a clear cut area, you're going to have to pay to bush hog that. So you'll want to be prepared for that.
Yeah,
if
or
you have a field,
be prepared for buying the tools, to have to do all that. And, there's lots of tools that we use, on our homestead, and it's more than what you would think, if you have a bigger place, you really do need a tractor.
Yeah. And one of the mistakes, well, I don't know that it was a mistake. One of the things, because I'm glad we've got it, but the tractor we got first is a small tractor. It was all we could afford at the time we got it used, and it's come in handy. We still use it for the garden, but it's not big enough to do big jobs. It's, it is perfect for the garden and, perfect for bush hogging little small areas. I love that little tractor, but if you're, later on we came into an older tractor and it has done a lot of work, and then we bought a new tractor now. But, starting out with a tractor too small could be a mistake.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure you
And
get the
even-
right size tractor for what you're doing.
Yeah, and even if it's just not a tractor, there's other things that you need, like a wheelbarrow or a tiller for the
Like
garden.
a wheelbarrow, those things are like $100 and something for a
Yeah,
good
they
one.
are. A hoe for the garden, shovels and rakes and
If you're starting out from scratch,
yes.
that now I think, talking about hidden cost, I think that's been the biggest hidden cost was
Mm-hmm.
like buying the shovels, the post hole digger, that kind of stuff. We got a we did break down and get a good tiller, but like that stuff, it
It
adds
can
up.
quickly add up,
Yeah.
and those are things you just need. You have to have a hoe for the garden
Right.
or a shovel or all of those things if you're going to have a garden, a tiller or you know even if you do like our friend, which we've said several times. We have a lady that we're friends with, and her dad used a mule. Well, you still have
Yeah.
to buy a mule, to plow the garden. That there is just cost in having a garden.
Yeah, and keeping up the yard, the lawnmower,
Yeah.
because we didn't we didn't have all that stuff when we first moved up here. We kind of
Hmm.
slowly had to get that because we moved from a house that all you needed was the lawnmower.
Right, right.
And
So those are some really truly hidden costs that I don't think anybody really thinks about, is those things that you have to have for just the garden. If
right.
you're going to have a raised garden bed, a raised garden, you got to have, that raised garden bed.
Yeah.
Whether you're building it out of wood or buying them, that's a cost too.
And that's something we're going to do is some raised beds. We have one raised bed, and we're going to try to do some more. I cut some wood for some other stuff, and I think I'm going to use it for the raised beds. It's just pine. I don't know how long it will last. I really don't want to put any chemicals on it to soak into the foods, but so we'll probably use those. But we cut those on a sawmill. They're actually 2 inches thick, so they're pretty thick.
Yeah,
So they may
should last for at least a little while.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I think it will, but
Yeah.
and like if you get a tractor, we just bought a bush hog because the old one was too small for the tractor we got, and that thing was $2,800. I mean, it was expensive. So, all of those things just add up very quick.
And another thing to think about is your livestock and your stuff for your garden. You've got to buy your seeds every year, or even if you're starting out, you're going to buy your seeds and then, you can save your seeds from then on. But that is a cost for your garden. And again, that tiller, to till your garden.
Yeah, I'd say the seeds every year I guess the seeds cost about $100 when we add them up.
Yeah, they do.
Because we do get probably, maybe a little over 100 because we get seeds we order them, and then we also get seeds from the co-op. So I think it's probably $150 for what we get for the garden.
And you have to have some kind of irrigation system. You got to have a watering system for that garden too, of some sort, whether it's hauling buckets or having a hookup so it so you can have some kind of watering system for that garden.
And if you want to get into canning stuff, that all adds up. We're not trying to scare anybody away. We're just trying to prepare you if you're looking at getting into this. So the canning stuff, the pressure cooker, it was pretty expensive, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. But, at least those things are kind of, you can reuse your jars. You just have to buy lids every year, sealers to go on your jars. So that is some hidden costs that you might not think about. And if you're not canning, you've got to, if you freeze, you've got to have a freezer to put your
And we
your
had to
food.
buy one of those.
We sure did. So we didn't have a freezer.
And a lot of people, we probably need more than one. We did have more than one freezer. We probably need more than one freezer now. But we've got the refrigerator freezer and then the other one.
The upright freezer.
Yeah, the upright. So.
And that's another thing you might want to think about. Do you want we like the upright freezer.
Yeah.
It's easy to get, stuff out of instead of like crawling in it and digging on the bottom.
Oh, yeah.
So we really like that. Now I think the upright freezers may cost a little bit more than a deep freezer.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a thought, things that you have to have if you're wanting to grow your own garden and store your food, unless you're not, and most people do want to do that. So
Yeah.
so you need a
Because
freezer.
that's kind of the point of having that garden is
Yeah.
to do that.
So you need a freezer or either a canning system for your vegetables
Yeah,
out of the
or
garden.
we actually do both. We can and we freeze to kind of have, a backup. You can, everything's not going to fit in the freezer, so we have to also do some canning. And, our goal this year in 2026 is to have enough food to last the whole year till
That's
the next
right.
garden.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to try to do that. And we're going to make videos along the whole journey there.
Yeah. And then another thing, getting back into like actually buying your property, you have to have some kind of insurance for that property. And so it's kind of hard, if you're getting into that to have insurance. You have to buy insurance to insure anything that happens on your property. I know that we had home insurance and we had our outer buildings covered, but they wasn't 100% covered. So therefore, when we did have a fire and it didn't pay 100% of whatever that outer building was worth, it just paid half of it, and it did pay, for the inside stuff, that was burned, like
The contents.
Yeah, the contents, but that's something that you need to think about. You have to have that insurance for your land and your property so you don't lose it all if something like that happens. And we know from experience it can, and it does happen. So
Yeah, and then sometimes depending on what area you're in, you might have to have some permits. We didn't have to have, I think we had to have one permit maybe, but you have to be prepared for that, and that's one unexpected cost. A lot of places is they'll pop you with these fees and these permits, and just depends on where you're going. So you'll want to get that straightened out. And then also, we live about 25 miles from the city, and you have to remember that cost a little more in gas. That if you're having to drive back and forth to work, that does add up. Now, in my mind, it's worth it because I just I wouldn't want to live anywhere else but the country.
I don't want to live in town. Again.
And we've spent our time in town.
Yes,
Believe me, we lived on one of the busiest streets in the city, and now we are glad we're on probably one of the least busiest streets.
We went from a busy street, and then we were out in the country, but we were in a HOA, where our houses were kind of close together.
Yeah.
And now we're way out in the country, and we're so glad, to be out here. So it is worth it,
And I think living out there made us appreciate this a lot more. I don't think we
so
really
too.
appreciated it the way we should have until we lived out there and came back. In a way, I wish we'd have never left here, but I think everything happens for a reason, and we're, you learn from it. So it's been a journey, and but also let me we've told you about the hidden cost in a homestead, but with a home there are hidden costs, because we bought a home that was 5 years old, a very nice house, so we thought, and it just.
Every time we turned around, there was something
like
that
I've
we
told
had to
some
fix.
people, I think I've said it on here before, but like the movie Money Pit, that was us. Because
Yeah.
every time,
It was awful.
yeah, and just to think we put all that money in that house, and, at least we didn't get it back, but the fixing it brought it, the value up so we could sell it. But like, here, at least we're putting money in that is going to be ours, and it's used for us and our family, and they'll inherit it.
Yeah, yeah.
They'll use it, because I do believe that I know my son will want to live on here. My daughter may not, but she's always got a place to come back to.
That's right.
So, this, I feel like it's an investment. It's, we're kind of starting the old home place back.
Right,
Because,
right.
it actually is the old home place.
Yeah.
But we're starting it back, and it's
And that's another thing about if you do get a homestead and you have a family, if you get a big enough homestead where you have, even what we have is almost 50 acres, you have that land for your children as they get grown, or even, once you're gone, they'll have that land to live on, and that is great.
and some people, I think your sister said this where she lives, are buying land and their whole family is spreading out living on it.
Right. And you
Because
could do
things
that.
because it costs so much these days to get land that
Right.
it's their whole families build houses and stuff on, and that's an option too. So it's usually worth it.
Even if
believe.
there are hidden costs, it's always worth it.
There's a lot of hidden costs, but with any like a home ownership, there's been more hidden costs with that we just didn't get back.
Right,
And
right.
at least we're rewarded with the hidden cost here. So, but always look at it and, do your research and
Just think about all those things that are, that could be hidden, that could be a hidden cost for you. Look that up and research it real good and know what you're going to have to be paying before you actually buy your homestead.
right. Or at least be prepared that you're going to have to pay more than you think you're going to pay, because everything seems so much more expensive, and it just
if you budget for 5,000 for whatever a well to be dug, you might as well budget for 6,000 because it's gonna most anything's gonna be
and
more.
talking about wells, I think that price seemed kind of low, because I know around here it's around 12,000 at least.
I think it's where you live. I think the water sources.
How much was your sister's well?
I don't know.
I don't know how deep they had to go, but if they have to go real deep, it gets very expensive.
Yeah,
I would love to have a well.
Mountain water, wells.
I took a jug of it home with me.
Yeah,
because it's such
tastes
good
so
water.
good.
And that's another thing we want to do. We have a spring on the property, and we're going to try
eventually
to clean that spring out and get it back so we can drink out of it.
Get a pump in it and pump some water out of it. That'd be nice to have. And even, the county water, they have to add so many chemicals to that.
I know. If you're coming out to the country to get away from the chemicals, and then which we're on county water, I know they have to do it, but it's like there's so much chemicals in there that it can't be good for us.
Right.
I just don't think that's the way we were meant to,
to live or to have. Yeah.
Right. So be thinking about that. And, so if you're looking for a homestead, but 2026 is coming up. So hopefully you can start yours out, and we're going to make a lot of goals, and we're going to make sure we stick to those goals and, be more self-sufficient, and hopefully in the long run, a simpler life. It hadn't got simpler yet, but I think
we'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there. So that's what homesteading's all about. So if you got anything to add, we hope you'll put it in the chat. And, we read all the comments. So if you do have anything, please, some unexpected costs you may have had when you purchased a house or a homestead. And this doesn't go, it's not just for living in the country.
Right,
it's, anything. So, buying a car,
anything's a hidden cost.
Is a hidden cost. So hopefully this has been helpful, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button. We're doing this homesteading nightly live stream every weeknight. And if you've got something you want us to discuss, let us know. So hope to see you back tomorrow night. So hope you have a good night.